Hey everyone, welcome back to Upside Down Data. In this video, we're going to talk about Fantom, FTM, and the recent price action that we've seen on Fantom. So if you guys like the content, subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and let's get right into it. So Fantom is one of the altcoins that's been hit especially hard. It's not alone in that regard by any means, but it definitely has taken an enormous hit over the past few months. If we take a measured move from the absolute top here back in November all the way to the bottom in June, Fantom pulled back 94% of its value. So if you were holding Fantom through that, you saw a very significant drawdown. I mean, even if we take it from the top to the current price level, we're still down 91% on Fantom. So this has been no walk in the park. Again, not unique to Fantom, but Fantom has not by any means been spared. And that was probably jarring to some folks because this was the first full-fledged bear market that Fantom has been through. I mean, it put in an enormous parabolic bullish move in 2021, running up a very hefty 2,100%. And now it's given back a good chunk of that move. Although, in fairness, it's still up 2x from the bottom of that move, so it hasn't retraced the full extent of the move, but bearish nonetheless. But what's interesting is that over the past few days and even over the past few weeks, there has been what appears to be an uptrend that's formed. We have this low here, followed by a high and a higher low, and now, over the past few days, Fantom has put in on a local level, this is a daily chart, a higher high, which is consistent with an uptrend forming. So we're going to take a look at a few indicators for Fantom and try to get a sense of whether this is a believable move and what might be likely to happen next, whether this move has legs and can continue. We're going to look at the UDPI, which is a risk indicator, and we'll look at that for Fantom on the long, medium, and short-term timeframes to try to get a detailed and granular sense of the risk profile for Fantom. And we will also look at a trend indicator, the market direction classifier, which will give us a critical level to watch for determining whether our bias should remain, expecting the uptrend that's formed here to continue or not. Now, uh, you know, the bullish price action over the past few days on Fantom is one good reason to look at it right now. A second good reason to look at it right now is the volume that has been entering the market over the past few months. I mean, really since these red candles back in May, and we entered this zone that we've been in ever since, we saw a pretty huge spike in volume. Um, I mean, it's actually orders of magnitude higher than the volume that was typical even during the bullish phases. I mean, when we look back at the volume that was required to put Fantom up into the $1 to $2 range, it's just one day that's only about not even half of the volume that was transacted here to the downside. What I'm trying to say is that there's been a surge of interest into Fantom since we have re-entered this range. What that might suggest is that people saw the move that it put in, people learned about Fantom and got interested in it, and now there's a much wider audience for Fantom. And now that the price has become more reasonable again, a lot of those people are participating in the Fantom market. Another way that we can look at this, and that I think maybe clarifies the significance of the volume that we're seeing here, is by looking at the VPVR, the volume profile visible range, which is these bars here on the right. And what they tell you is the amount of volume that's been transacted at any given price level over the entire history of the asset. So this red line tells you the exact point that has had the highest amount of volume transacted, and that's at about 35 to 36 cents, which not coincidentally is right where Fantom encountered resistance and is getting rejected off of today. This is one reason that the VPVR is useful, is because it helps you identify important support and resistance levels. When there's been a lot of volume that's been transacted at a particular level historically, that suggests that there are orders waiting there on the books to be filled, that there are people watching those levels, and that there's likely going to be continued volume transacted at these levels for as long as the price stays at them. So this is a very important level for Fantom for all these reasons, because of the drawdown that it's seen, because of the recent bullish moves that it's been putting in, and because of the amount of volume that's being transacted at this level right now, and the amount of volume that has been transacted at this level historically. So let's take a look at the risk profile for Fantom. Let's see what the UDPI is saying about this. We're going to first take a look at the long-term upside downside potential indicator. This is, as I mentioned, a risk indicator that's designed to tell you how much upside potential and downside potential are realistic for an asset at any given uh, point in time. And what the long term tells you is that this is a patient version of the UDPI indicator, which is intended to be interpreted on a scale of months or even longer. So, at a minimum of months, if not years. And what this is flashing to us is that the UDPI on this move down to the bottom seem to find support at the -3 level. And when we see negatives, that means that much of the downside potential has been exhausted, it's been realized, and that there's more upside potential. So lower values here, negative values mean lower risk and more upside potential. And now the UDPI has been moving back to the upside and is sitting at about -2. What that indicates is that there's still a good deal more upside potential that the model considers to be realistic relative to downside potential. Although at the same time, this 50 or so percent move over the past week has realized some of that realistic upside potential. And now that there's slightly less, and by the same token, there's slightly more downside potential that's become realistic as a result of this move. Meaning, there's more downside that could get given back, and we've seen that play out today. Fantom being down about 8 or 9% in the last 24 hours is evidence of that. But that's not going to show up that quickly on the long-term UDPI, which, as I mentioned, is a patient indicator. So the white line here, in case that wasn't clear, is the UDPI itself, and the yellow line is the price of Fantom. And so you can see how these relate to each other. Um, one thing that's informative when we look at this over a long period of time is when we see what you might call divergences. The most striking one is when we had this double top on the price of Fantom back a few months ago, or more than a few months ago now, back at the end of 2021, before the downtrend, this really brutal downtrend began. What happened on the UDPI, the long-term UDPI, is that um, the UDPI did not make as much of a push to the upside on that second price move to the upside. It kind of rolled over as the price began to roll over too, and followed all the way down to -3. So this is what we're seeing on the long-term UDPI. We can also get a little bit of a quicker read on the risk situation for Fantom by pulling up the medium term, and you can see how this changes when we pull up the medium, since we're on the same scale here. And um, shouldn't be surprising that the medium term reacting a little bit more quickly to this bullish move over the past week is a little bit less low risk. It's approaching -1. And so on a medium term time frame, we're approaching this kind of zone of neutrality where upside and downside are equally realistic from the model's perspective. And if we move to the short term UDPI, we see a continuation of that trend. The short term is actually almost reset in the sense that it's returning to zero. First time that it's done that, even on the short term UDPI, for several months. So, what this suggests is that from a risk standpoint, on a short term standpoint, there's not much of an edge to be had here. So, if you're a short term trader looking to swing in and out of Fantom, then I think patience is the right call. If you're a medium term trader, a swing trader perhaps, then you start to see a little bit more upside potential working in your favor. And if you're accumulating for a long term strategy, meaning you're dollar cost averaging into the market, you're expecting to wait however long it takes for the market to return to bullish sentiment, then from a long term UDPI standpoint, this is a pretty decent accumulation zone, as is the case for many assets. but even for um, Fantom, which is one of the better performers in the top 100 over the past couple of weeks. So that's risk. The other kind of indicator that we like to look at is a trend indicator, and we have a few of these. I'm going to pull up the market direction classifier today because I think it's useful, especially for where Fantom is at right now. What the market direction classifier does is it analyzes the behavior of the asset's price and it identifies a critical level above which the market can be considered to be continuing to take a bullish direction, and below which the market can be considered to be taking a bearish direction. And we have this color coded to make interpretation of it simple. Um, this is the price chart for Fantom, color coded by market direction classifier, and the yellow line is that critical level. So when the MDC is flashing green, that suggests that tells you that the market is taking a bullish direction for the time being, and when the MDC is red, it tells you that the market is taking a bearish direction for the time being. Right now, that critical level is about 27.7 cents. That's important because Fantom is sitting at, at about 31.5 cents right now. And so it has a little bit of a cushion which it opened up over the past week to week and a half. It began last week below that critical level. As you can see, um, the the MDC was red, and there was that was a time that if you were trading the MDC, not necessarily something that you would want to just program and then walk away from, but definitely a useful input into your trading strategy. And if you were using that, you might have been waiting to see if it could overtake that 27.7 level. And now that it has, Fantom becomes a lot more interesting. I mean, if we look historically and we identify these times when Fantom has flipped into the green after spending some time in the red, those have represented some major opportunities to pick up some substantial gains. In fact, every time that it's flipped into the green, with one exception, we have subsequently seen a pretty significant move up in price. And what's useful about the MDC is that, as Mark pointed out in his video on Link the other day, and as has come up in some other videos on MDC, it also helps you to manage risk in the sense that it gives you a critical level, which is updating dynamically as the model learns from the price behavior of the asset. And you can use that critical level to get in and out. So let's say all the way back here in early 2020, you had seen Fantom's MDC flip green and use that as a trigger to buy into the market. Well, obviously, it didn't pan out because that was a fake out that was then followed by another move to the downside. But what you could have done there is gotten back out of the market as soon as the MDC flipped back red because of that critical level that you could have been watching. So this gives you a kind of nimble approach, even if the model calls it wrong, which happens rarely, but it does happen. It gives you a way to get in and out quickly without incurring too much of a loss. And at the same time, it gives you an opportunity to get in right before these parabolic moves when they start. So we'll have to wait and see whether this is the beginning of another parabolic move like we've seen previous times when the MDC has flipped green for Fantom. Um, but it gives you an asymmetric opportunity to try to catch that move to the upside without having to worry about the same degree of downside potential if that's where the market decides to go. Because if Fantom were to turn around, lose the 31.5 level, lose the 30, then drop down to 28 cents, and then lose that critical level at 27.7 or wherever exactly it is by the time it gets there, then that would be your trigger to get out. So um, what we're seeing all together on Fantom is some impressive price action, a massive influx of volume over the past few months, which has also supported this most recent move. As we can see here, big influx of volume driving the price up over the past week. We see that their risk levels are still fairly low on the longer term time frames, not as much on the short term time frame, although not bearish either, just looking fairly neutral on the short term. And particularly interesting is that the market direction has flashed green. It's showing bullish after, recovering that critical level at 27.7 cents. So to me, all of this taken together makes Phantom a pretty interesting one to watch right now. So keep an eye on Phantom. We'll keep you updated as we monitor it and see what these indicators are telling us. So in the meantime, hope you guys found this useful, and thanks for watching.